for a couple of more minutes. Thanks. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining this webinar. I think we shall, I see quite a few people connected, but I think we shall start anyway, and people will connect as we go along. So I would like to introduce this presentation and the presenters. So for those of you who have been on the Monitoring and Evaluation Task Force, you all know Sophie. Sophie has been a great advisor to the MNE Task Force and has really helped us pull everything together, also based on her experience in another secretariat called the CCAC. So Sophie has kindly accepted to also help us with this training webinar on the reporting tools, also based on the experience that she's had on similar reporting tools within the CCAC. So Sophie will be walking through most of this presentation today, and maybe Sophie, you can already share the screen, and I don't know if you wanted to add a few words.
Thank you, Cecilia, and I think we should get started, and I'm sharing the screen with everyone right now.
You have already shared the screen because we cannot see it. No, now it's here.
Yes, okay, great.
Sophie, if you are speaking, you're muted.
No. Yes, I'm muted. Should I let you start with the introduction, Cecilia? And maybe two things is the only thing is maybe if everyone can mute themselves unless when they are speaking, and otherwise, and of course you can raise your hand, I think, and you can also write messages if you have questions throughout the presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Sophie. So I can definitely start. Maybe you can put the presentation on the big screen, as we see it's quite small for the moment. So as mentioned to all of you in the emails and in our discussion preceding to this is really a webinar that looks at the data collection and reporting. This is based on, of course, the work of the Monitoring and Evaluation Task Force, which is chaired by Becca and the SPC program. A number of people from the MNE Task Force are also on this webinar, so I invite you all, please, to chip in at any time to make any precisions that you think need to be made. So I would like to thank all the MNE Task Force for the great work that has been done in the last 6-7 months, basically since we established the task force. We really now have a solid framework of indicators of success, 13 of which we will really be measuring this year, 7 of which we will start developing the methodologies, the impact indicators. So this webinar really looks at now what are the reporting tools, what is the methodology, and providing you all the information that we have to help in the reporting effort. Of course, I mean, then feel free, there will be a question and answer session at the end, but then, of course, as Sophie already said, please feel free to raise your hand or to raise any questions that you may have throughout this presentation. So the latest progress of the Monitoring and Evaluation Task Force, as I mentioned, the indicators have been endorsed already by the KYC board in the month of October. Since October, the Monitoring and Evaluation Task Force has been developing the methodology behind each one of these indicators, both in terms of definition, method of computation, and how to collect and report the data. And this is what we'll be going through today. There have been a series of bilateral consultations with all of the programs to make sure that this, as much as possible, reflects what can be collected in the program, and of course across the program. This is a pilot version, so as a pilot version, this is the first effort in the data collection. Following this first effort, of course, we will review also the framework and make sure that we align as much as possible to what is feasible and realistic. The board meeting that took place on Monday and Tuesday of this week went through the methodological framework. It has been approved, so this is the version that we will be working on, and we will be reporting on to the high-level political forum on Agenda 2030 and for the midterm review of the 10YST, with, of course, all the fine-tuning possibilities as per the framework and, as I mentioned, following the pilot testing. You have received this morning a link to Google Documents. On this, you will find the final version of all of the methodology that we will be presenting today. This is the reference document for the data collection. I think you will probably find all of the information that you need and clarifications that you need. There is a part that is left also, of course, to the discretion of the reporting actors. As we discussed within the Monitoring and Evaluation Task Force, often within the Program Coordination Desk, you will be best placed to judge certain gray zones where they can be placed. So, as I mentioned, the objective of this webinar is really a briefing on the process, the methodology, and the reporting. The reporting will start on Monday, the 15th of January, and will close on the 15th of February. So we very much look forward to this first effort, to receiving all of the data and the reports from the program, and then, of course, to bring it together and analyze and clean up the data accordingly, which we will then, of course, share with all of you. So, Monday the 15th of January is a couple of days' time, so this comes at a timely point. Sophie, we can move to the next slide. So as per the framework, and especially for those of you who haven't been in the task force, so we have aligned the progress reporting to the HRPS. As you know, the HRPS is really our main reporting body, and therefore, to make sure that we only have one data collection and reporting effort, we've aligned it to those timelines. The HRPS reports of the 10YST are generally due in mid-April, so backward planning from there really came up with the annual program progress reports to be collected and consolidated by the program during the month of January and February. So due by the 15th of February, as I mentioned earlier. Following that, there will be a consolidation and data analysis by the Secretariat. The board will review this report before submitting it to HRPS. Of course, the monitoring and the data collection is an effort that goes throughout the year. In this case, for this year's reporting effort, given that it's the first one, we have a 1 month time frame. But of course, when we think about the 2018 reporting effort, for some of you, it may be useful to consider collecting the data throughout the year as your partners may provide. Again, and you will see this in the methodology in terms of the actual reporting effort, those that are involved in the activities of the programs will presumably be providing you at the coordination level with the data then to be consolidated at program level. So the scope of the reporting, just in terms of general methodology considerations for this pilot phase that we're launching on Monday next week, firstly, the scope of the reporting, the primary requirement is really on the results of the activities directly supported by the 10YST and other activities that are part of the program portfolio. This has been very much discussed within the task force, and we have agreed on 3 attribution categories. Those are directly supported by the 10YST, directly meaning either through direct technical or financial contribution. And the second attribution category, which really comes into the scope of this reporting, is the 10YST branded or the 10YST portfolio activities that you may have within your own program. The second consideration on the scope is, of course, there are flexibility considerations throughout the work, and the consideration on where information is available and progress is achieved where information is available beyond the direct and the portfolio activities, please do report them. We have specific examples. For instance, the effort that has been undertaken by the Sustainable Public Procurement Program in terms of the global review that they undertake every 3 years. This is not a direct, the results reported within that are not directly influenced by the 10YSP, but are very good stock-taking exercises on what is happening within the Sustainable Public Procurement arena. So that was just to give you an example of what the third category and the others could consist of. So this is, we are pilot testing it, and this is in the build-up to the midterm review. So this is the first year that we are collecting the data, and the Monitoring and Evaluation Task Force agreed that when possible, programs are encouraged to report on results since their establishment. So you will see in the reporting tool that the results are there is a consideration for the year of the reporting. If you have data already easily available that can be plugged into the reporting tool prior to 2016, I think it might be very useful to already provide it so that we can start looking at what the midterm review report will look like. So in the case of this year, the reporting is not only for 2016 results, but looks backwards since the establishment of the program when it is possible. In terms of disaggregation categories, you will see in the reporting tool, and Sophie is shortly going to go through this, within the framework of the methodology, there are some consideration of when the information is not available, some disaggregation categories can be left empty. There are also a number of cross-cutting ones that go across all of the indicators of the 10YSP. These include things such as the sector of activity, the country, the region, the attribution, as we just discussed, the sustainability themes, which are linked to the impact indicators, the reporting stream, the scope, and the type of organization. We will be going through these a little bit more systematically now, as Sophie will be taking over in terms of explaining further the methodology around each one of the indicators. So, Sophie, let me hand back over to you.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. And yes, so now we're going to what Cecilia was saying in introduction was that over the past month or so, we've been working to develop the reporting tool, which is going to be the sort of file with which we will be working to report your results. And here in the Secretariat team, it's been our colleague Cecile who has very much worked on that, and so thank you, Cecile, for this. And so the tool is ready, and as Cecilia was saying, it's going to be shared with you this afternoon, so you have it ready for to start the reporting on Monday. And so the idea here right now is just to show you a little bit how to navigate within the tool. So here I'm not at the very first page, but so basically when you open your Excel file, you arrive on a table of content page where you're asked which reporting period we are in. So as Cecilia was saying, this first page is a little special because we are in the reporting period 2016. But we are encouraging, programs are encouraged to report on results which happened before this year, so since basically they were established. Then you would be asked who are you basically, and on behalf of which are you reporting. So, and here you can see you have a little arrow, and if you click on it, you can choose which program you are. And so here we've done some examples for the STP program, and here you ask a few basic information that then you can be contacted for questions, etc., and that the template is linking to you. And so on the left side you have basically the table of contents, and you can navigate through the template via this table of contents. So the next page is a summary page. This one will come back to it later. And so you have then an introduction tab in which you can see you have basically a summary of all of the general methodology consideration that applies for this pilot phase, and through which Cecilia has already gone a little, and through which we can go also in more details afterwards. Then for each indicator, you're going to have one tab, which is structured along the same line. So to note, because this is quite practical, at the top of each indicator tab, you have a link back to the table of contents. So for instance, if you want to move from indicator 1 to indicator 3.6, then it's easy because you just have to go back, you can go back easily and then choose the indicator you want to get to. For each indicator, you have a recap of the definition at the top, as well as of the key element of the method of computation. Then you have a small table which enables you to provide baseline and targets. Next to it, you have a little table to which you should not input any data, where you have basically a summary of what you've reported in the indicator table. Then you get to your indicator table with the different disaggregation to choose from, and this will get to it in a minute. And just as I was showing you, for a number of criteria and of disaggregation category, when you click on a cell and you see a little arrow, it means that you have a drop-down list and you can choose from it. So that's basically how the template is structured. And now coming back to this summary page, it's just a page where all of your totals for each indicator are being summarized. And here you will be asked to, at the end of your reporting, provide a little assessment, a little sort of comment on sort of the overall performance of your program on each indicator. So you have here a little box enabling you to provide this short narrative. So this is more or less how the template is structured, and we're going to get back to it when we get into the indicator, what we're going to do just right now. So for this sort of like second part of the webinar, the idea is to go with you through each of the indicators, not in great detail, but just to underline the key element of methodology to be kept in mind when you will be reporting on each of them. And so what I'm going to do, I think, is take them sometimes two by two, and maybe the thing is, Cecilia, I cannot really see while I'm presenting whether people are raising hand or asking questions in the chat box. But feel free to interrupt me at the end of the presentation on one or two indicators. I will leave a time for questions, so you can raise your hand and ask any points for clarification or any question you may have. So we are going to start with the objective 1 indicators, which are output level and are focused on the support to capacity building and the facilitation of access to financial and technical assistance. And so the first two indicators are 1.1 and 1.2 on SCP projects and on the financing, the shift to SCP. So the indicator on SCP projects is basically where you will report on the number of projects supporting the shift to SCP. So here, for each indicator, I've given you a little example of, based on your reporting, what the Secretariat, by aggregating your results, might be able to sort of produce in terms of aggregated results and be able to communicate thanks to this new framework. So for instance, for this one, something that could be said after you will have reported would be something like, since 2012, 20 capacity building projects supporting waste reduction in Asia have been implemented under the 10YFP portfolio. So that sort of give you sort of a picture and illustrate what we are after with these indicators, and we've now having established this common language across the program so that, we can build these aggregated results based on each of your individual results. So, in terms of under this indicator, what type of projects can be reported on? So, can be reported on both initiated and finalized projects. What cannot be reported on are standalone activities, meaning if you have received funding for just like a side event or a communication meeting, this is not considered as a project. We have decided that it was not considered as a project, but could be reported under other indicators, like the one on communication and outreach activity, for instance. So, for the reporting, and we are going to get to the Excel file in a minute, we are recommending that each project be reported as a separated entry. Yes, and so maybe now is a good time to go into the Excel. So yes, which means that, for instance, here we've given you a little example, which is based on the Sustainable Tourism Enterprise Program for the South Pacific, and so each project would be one separated line in the template. So here, as I was telling you, you can choose the status of your project. Is it an initiated project or a completed project? You would then say number of projects would basically be 1. For umbrella projects, if you have umbrella project with a number of projects and you feel it's more appropriate because they are very similar to report on them, to report on the umbrella in only one line, that's also possible. And here the number of projects then will be 10 projects, for instance, if you have an umbrella of 10 projects, which are basically following the same lines. Then you ask, the budget associated to your project. One thing which is very important here is that it's recommended that in this budget you do include all the crowdfunding as well. So that's something which is important because that's something the NYSE is keen to keep track of. And so then, as we've discussed, you can choose your attribution for your project. Is it a project which is directly supported by the NYSE? Is it a project that belongs to one of your program portfolio, but it's not funded by the trust fund? Is it something else, which is beyond the scope of the NYSE, but is relevant to your area of work? Then, the question of the sector, and as we were telling you, there is a list of sectors here from which you can choose from. To keep in mind is that we have not locked this template in any way, so that for this test phase, you do have flexibility. So if you feel the list of sectors do not include the relevant one to your project, you can very well edit and write something else, and that will be, which is not part of the list, and that's no problem. And I mean, we are recommending that you stick as much as possible to the list. However, if you feel that there are categories missing, which are very much relevant to your work, feel free to put them in here, and they can be integrated during the review of the template to the standard list. Here, as Cecilia was saying, there are the sustainability themes, which are also cross-cutting the aggregation category. So in this project, focused on energy, on climate change, on waste, etc. And so, as Cecilia was saying here, these sustainability themes have been linked to the impact indicator. And so here, for instance, we consider that this project is relevant to all of the sustainability themes, so all can also be a relevant answer, if we may call it like that. And so then you have another disaggregation category about what is the methodology for the project. So here it will be a capacity building project. Then you will say in which country, in which region, what is the scope of the project, the name of the person with the entity implementing the project, whether it was funded through public or private funds, and at the end, you will provide a short narrative on this project. And you can attach to your reporting the relevant file attached to your project. So that's for basically the project indicator, and I'm going to take both the project indicator and the financing the shift to STP indicator together before opening it to questions. So the second indicator is focused on financing the shift to STP, and basically here the idea is to report and capture the amount of financial resources that are made available to support the shift to STP. So by this we mean any monetary or in-kind contribution which is not repayable, it can be of any amount. It has to have the status of spent resource. One other thing is that here again, you can report, you are free to report on amount at the level that seems the most relevant to you. So you can either disaggregate at, a project level. You can also report on, overall donor grants if you don't have the details of these grants. You are, and it's something that really applies across the framework for this pilot phase especially, is that eventually you are the one making the judgment call on what seems to make sense in terms of how to report and what doesn't. So, we can encourage you to report on as a disaggregated level as possible, but it's always for you to make the judgment call on what makes sense and what doesn't. So as we were saying, I'm taking these two indicators together because they are linked. So basically, amount for projects you would have reported under 1.1, so your project budget, should be also reported under this indicator. There has been a lot of discussion on how to link both of these indicators, and eventually we have decided that it would make most sense to keep them separated for the reporting, but to encourage you to basically take the data you reported under 1.1 and report it as well under 1.2, so the budget of your project can also be captured under 1.2. And to help this, we have structured basically in an almost similar way the two reporting templates. So here again, you are encouraged to also report on co-funding, either to your trust fund project, but co-funding also meaning funding going to activity within your program portfolio, which are beyond the trust fund funding. And so just to give you, to have a look at the reporting template. So for instance, here you can see that I have my project that was on 1.1, which is also reported here with the same budget. But I've also added something else, which is an Australian sustainable tourism grant, on which I do not have a lot of information, but which is really relevant to the work of the STP program, and for which I know the amount. I know that it's a grant from Australia. I know that it's dedicated to energy issues in the tourism industry, and that it focuses on the Asia and the Pacific region. And so here I put my narrative. If I have attachment to help justify and provide more information on this grant, I can attach it to this reporting line. So I'm going to stop here maybe for the first two and ask if anyone has any question at this stage. And Cecilia, if you can help me here to tell me if someone is raising their hand.
Yeah, of course. We'll follow the screen in case there are questions that come through already. I don't see any raised hands, so it seems to be all clear so far.
Perfect. Hopefully this is right. And so then let's move to indicator 1.3, which is about the training for SCP. So on
Sophie, just give me 1 second because I know that so I try to increase the audio level because Rochelle and Patricia are having a bit of trouble. I just want to make sure that do any other of you have also issues with the audio, or I mean, in that case, please raise your hand. Rochelle and Patricia, you can hear fine now? Yeah, so Rochelle was saying that she can hear me better than she can hear you, Sophie. So I don't know whether it's on your computer you can try and increase the volume.
I'm going to try that.
I can hear you loud and clear, so...
I've increased it, so hopefully it's a little better now.
And then I guess that maybe if my volume is too high from here, I'll stop speaking and you can increase also the volumes on your own computers, and that might help. Okay, Sophie, back to you.
Thank you, Cecilia. And well, yeah, so hopefully you can hear me a little better, and otherwise keep complaining. So we'll try to find a solution. Back to this indicator, and now moving to indicator 1.3, which is about training for SCP. So under this indicator, the idea is to measure the number of person days of training on SCP, which is basically a unit of measurement which can be calculated from the number of participants and the number of days. So again, here an idea of, what we are looking at once we would have all reported, and the type of then sort of storyline we'll be able to write. So in 2016, the 10YFP supported 350 person days of training on sustainable food systems in the Africa region. So what form can take a training? It can take the form, it's fairly large. It can take the form of a sponsored seminar, of workshops, of on-the-job learning experience. It can be a distance or in-person training. What it cannot take in terms of form, and what really should be distinguished to avoid double counting, is is basically everything that falls under communication and outreach. Meaning that, if you organize an event, you have to choose whether you qualify it as a training or as a communication event. What we recommend is that events that do not have a clearly outlined curricula and learning objectives would rather be considered as a communication and outreach event. Same thing for the policy consultation and the decision-making meetings, which of course also always have a sort of like knowledge and awareness raising component, but are also intended at outreach to policymakers, at sharing of information, etc. And this would rather fall under outreach and communication. And so one key thing to note is that you cannot report one same event under both the 1.3 indicator and the 2.2 on outreach and communication. Another, basic requirement, is the fact that you can only count participants that have completed the entire training course, and that you should not count as participants the organizer of your training. And so, going into the template for a quick look, so we are moving to 1.3 now. So here again, you can see you have the definition, which you can find in the main document, in the annex, the metadata sheet, which is also copied here. And so getting into the reporting lines. Then you ask for the title of your training. You ask to disaggregate by gender, if you can. If you have a list of participants where you don't have gender, then, you just report your total number of participants. Next to that, you report your number of days of training. And then it's automatically calculated how many person day of training have been completed, and it's basically a multiplication between the number of participants and the number of days of training. Here again, you ask for the associated budget. And here it's more in order to give an indication of what was the scope of the scope or the scale of your training. So was it, obviously a training with a budget of $10,000 is not of the same scale as a training with a budget of $100,000, for instance. So here it's really, the idea of this budget category is really to help get a grasp on the scope of the activity reported. So, and when you don't have the information, as we were saying earlier, you can just leave it empty, or say it says non-communicated, you don't have the information. So in terms of attribution, again, you can choose between, was it something that was directly supported by the 10YFP? Was it a training that was part of my portfolio, but not funded through the trust fund? Or was it a training that's relevant to my sector, but to which we did not contribute? Then what's the sustainability theme? What's the sector? What is the country of relevance? Here you can have more than one country, which is something important. And that's the same for every category. Basically, if there is more than one which is relevant, you can have multiple. The region and the scope. So here was a regional scope for the training, for instance. Yes, so on this one, that's more or less it. And I would like to take with this one, the one on communication and outreach, so do the two together before opening it for question again. And so under this 2.2 indicator on communication and outreach for SCP, here the idea is to report on the number of outreach and communication activities, focusing on SCP issues, as well as the number of recipients of these activities. So here you can see a little example again. Since 2012, the 10YFP has supported over 70 policy consultations in Latin America. Sorry, I should use that. Has supported over 70 consultations in Latin America, convening over 3,500 decision makers to discuss SCP issues in the region. What's important to keep in mind is that under this indicator, we are speaking both outreach and communication, and so there are sort of two main types of formats of activity that can be reported. You have everything that has to do with communication and outreach events. So, for instance, a high-level sponsored event, a side event at the COP or something else. You also have all of your decision-making meeting and your policy consultations. So, for instance, a regional, a national forum. You also have all of the presentations that you may do to promote your program within different forums. The press conferences, would be another type of event that could fall under this category. And then you have a second format, which is everything that has to do with more the communication and outreach material. And so basically here we call it the spreading of a message through printing or electronic media. So if you do a brochure, a newsletter, a news article, the social media activity, including the blogs, you can also report it under this indicator. yes, and I'll come to the template in a minute to show you how this can work. And so yes, for the second form, the number of recipients would then be if you send your newsletter to 150 recipients, then that's 150 recipients. If your article has been read by X number of people, I mean, if you can get that number, then that would be your number of recipients. One thing to note, again, in terms of double counting consideration, is that you cannot report a communication material under this indicator and under the indicator on knowledge products and tools. So here, basically, what we are underlining is the fact that you need to differentiate between communication material and or communication products and knowledge products. So a brochure, for instance, a short brochure or a press article would fall under communication, while a scientific report, a wide line manual or a manual or etc. would fall under a knowledge product. And so, for instance, if you have a scientific report released, it's one knowledge product. And then if you have a press article associated to this knowledge product, it's one communication and outreach activity. So hopefully that's more or less clear. And let's go have a look at the template. So here it's not this one, but it's this one. And so yes, so you ask everything that's in green is for quantitative information, and everything that's in gray is for qualitative information. So here you ask what's the title of your communication activity. So here, for instance, we've taken the example of a partner consultation for the Sustainable Tourism Enterprise Program, which took place, I mean, it's fictive, but on the 10th of April 2016 in Samoa. And so here you ask, so it was one meeting. There was 150 participants, so it's 150 recipients. It was part of, so here it's a communication campaign, but that doesn't make much sense. It's more of a consultation. It was a consultation, a policy consultation meeting. The budget, we don't know. We don't have the information. And it was part of the portfolio, so something beyond what was funded by the trust fund, the tourism sector, etc. And here a little narrative explaining the objective of the meeting and the targeted audience, and of course attaching the meeting summary. Because obviously, and if this was not clear, maybe we should have underlined it before. But in this framework is about demonstrating results and success, and so it's about completed activities mainly. So you would only report on activities that have been completed. So again, in terms of number of entries, as I was saying before, it's very much up to your judgment. Meaning, if for instance you're at the end of the year, throughout the year you've sent 20 newsletters, either you want to report on each of them individually, or you can also group them. So here you would say STP program newsletter, and number of them 20. You have a mailing list of 200 recipients, so it would be 200 recipients. It would be in terms of the type, then you would choose newsletter. The budget that would associated to it if you have it, to give again an indication of the scope and scale of this activity, etc. And so I'm going to stop here and again open it for questions.
So while we wait to see if I see any hands raised and people want to mute themselves, I just wanted to bring one precision to what Sophie has been explaining. So she's been using examples, so just to make sure that we're clear on especially in particular on what concerns the attribution category. So what you've heard in terms of direct, Portfolio Unbranded, and others. The line between these two is, of course, it is not cast in stone, and it's up to you in the coordination desk to decide where you put it. Sophie has been using the example of the trust fund. That's one example of direct. Of course, we know that in the coordination desk there are a number of other things that can be considered also direct. In the case of the consumer information, you've got, of course, the 80 project. In the case of sustainable lifestyle and education, you've got the Japan contributions. In the case of, for instance, the tourism program, there are activities that you will be supporting in terms of the international year I forget the whole name of it, but the International Year on Tourism for Sustainable Development, I think it is. So, I mean, those activities, of course, are also considered direct, and the judgment is left to you. So don't necessarily mean that it's direct does not necessarily mean only trust funds, just to make it very clear. So, still looking at if any hands are raised, any questions posed, but I don't see any questions in the chat box or any hands raised. Still very curious. Feel free to unmute yourself also if you want to chip in at any time.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. And I think, yes, that's a very important precision you're making. And maybe I'm thinking at the end, we'll have a quick look at the general methodology consideration in slightly more detail so that you can see that for quite a number of things, I mean, again, you're the best place to judge on what makes sense to report as what, whether it's regarding attribution, whether it's regarding whether you would qualify this event as a training or as a communication event, etc. This is very much left up to you. So now, 5 minutes to do it. Coming back to indicator 2.1, that we just skipped to move to 2.2, to take 2.2 with 1.3, but now back to it. So the 2.1 is about the SCP network. So here the idea is to really measure the number of governments and of other organizations that are engaged in the 10YFP and in its programs. So, for instance, again, here I was providing a little sort of insight on what at the end could be aggregated together. So, for instance, it's 2012, a total of, here it's not very, yes, because I get to it, of 2,000, it's quite big, but I get to why I've put such a big number. Governments, and it's more governmental organizations, and of organizations have engaged in the 10YFP, including 100 national governments, 300 civil society organizations, etc. So, and that's where I wanted to get, is that here, under this indicator, in terms of governing institutions, each of them should be counted as one. So, for instance, if in the SSF program, the Ministry of Agriculture in Australia is involved, it's one. Then, if in the STP program, the Ministry of Tourism of Australia is involved, it's one as well, and these would be counted as two when aggregated. So, same thing is, even if within your own program, you're working with different governmental organizations within the same country, you can count each of them as one. However, if one same entity in your program is involved in different capacity, so they are contributing as a MAC member and are also one of the a coordination desk, and I think maybe the MAC are all coordination desks, but I mean, if someone is involved in different type of capacity, here you should only count them as one. So, two different organizations from the same country, same government involved should be counted as two, but one same organization involved in different ways should only be counted as one. That's the most important specification. And so let's go into the template to have a look at how this would work to report. And so here, for instance, we've provided a number in the baseline and the target table. So in 2012, when the STP, STP is maybe not the best example because the program existed prior, I think, to the 10YFP. But since in 2012, the number of program of organization and governmental organization involved in the STP program was 0. And we aim at having 500 active partners in 2018. So that could be one baseline and one target, to give you an example here. So continuing on the example, here for the STP program, in 2016, we have 10 national government entities involved. Their name are ABCD, they are from country ABCD. We have 150 civil society organizations involved in the program, as program leads, co-leads, coordination desk, MAC member, or partner. We have 6 international organizations involved, and we have 75 business sector organizations involved, this time only as partners, with a scope from national to international, for instance. And here you could provide specification, for instance, by saying that it's been the focus of the STP program for the past year or so to try and engage more and more private sector and get them to work with you within the program, for instance. So that's it for the STP network indicator. And so we are going to move to 2.3 and 3.7 on the production and use of STP knowledge and tools. And so here, as you can see, we've grouped 2 indicators together. And I'm going to do that so that you can see better. Yeah. So we've grouped 2 indicators together. The first one is 2.3 on number of STP knowledge resources and technical tools produced. And the second one is 3.7, which is an outcome indicator, which is the number of download on the STP clearinghouse and any other quantitative representation of use of the knowledge resource or the technical tool. So this one has been grouped together for the reporting because they are very much linked to each other. One is about the production of the knowledge resource and the technical tools, and the other one is about their use. So, what do we call knowledge and a technical tool? I mean, as I was saying earlier, again, it's very much for you to make the call on what falls under this category and what doesn't. But we've provided you with a conceptual definition in the metadata sheet and with a few examples. So you can have scientific articles, policy briefs, reports, guidelines, software, tools, educational materials, etc. In terms of the knowledge resource, as we've already specified, you shouldn't have it report. You should choose whether what you're reporting is a knowledge resource or a technical tool, whether it is a communication material. It should also not be a mixed knowledge resource and changes in practices. So a knowledge resource, for instance, I don't know, a new report, a feasibility study can lead on a technology which will then be adopted. So you have your knowledge resource, which is your feasibility study, and which will lead to your change in practice, which is the adoption of a new technology. But the two are not the same. And same thing with a commitment. I mean, a commitment, but I think it's fairly straightforward why a commitment is not a knowledge resource or a technical tool. So here it's just the example I was providing you earlier when speaking to 2.2 about outreach and communication. And then on 3.3, we are measuring the number of downloads. The number of downloads, will be calculated under the clearinghouse, so you wouldn't have to calculate it yourself. It will be provided by the Secretariat team. However, it will not be available because the clearinghouse has been upgraded. It will not be available before 2017. And I will get to that in a minute while speaking to the template. And so here a little example, for instance, at the end of the reporting phase or, looking forward in the future at some point, thanks to the reporting you will be doing and thanks to this new framework, you could be able to say something like in 2017, the 10YFP supported the production of 100 knowledge resources on energy use reduction, which have been downloaded over 100,000 times on the clearinghouse. Just not maybe the best example, but just to give you an idea of what can be produced then when aggregating results. So getting to the template. So structure as all of the other as usual, but here you have two indicators. So for instance, here we're taking the example of the STP program once again, and we have assumed that in 2016 they have produced training manuals for hotel enterprises in the Pacific. It was 6 documents. So here we could, it shouldn't be, we should more or less know either they are all regionally relevant and so it's no country specific, or we have 6 different countries because they were targeted at 1 country each, etc. So the associated budget was $200,000. As we are saying, they were manuals, so they were 10YFP. It was directly supported by the 10YFP. The sector would not be that, or would be tourism and hospitality. And they were uploaded on the clearinghouse. They were downloaded 150 times. And so here we are getting to 3.7. So at the end you ask how many times it was downloaded. And because right now we do not have, for anything before 2016, we do not have the possibility of calculating the number of downloads, you also have another cell where you can provide any other quantification of use. So here, for instance, we are saying that the manuals have been used to train 100 hotel managers, including 20 who will not, we will now use them to train others. So that's an indication of how much the training manual has been used and also will be used. And here you can provide the link to the manuals, of course, and you have your little supporting narrative. So basically what this is saying is that for anything you're going to report as of Monday, here you will not be able to provide the data, and the Secretariat will not be able to provide it either. So you should, until next year, so you should focus on this cell on any quantification of use. And it's said here, basically, so it's also said here. One thing I can note as well while looking at this indicator is that on your column B here, and hopefully you can see fairly well, you have your column on the year of release of the resource. So here it's been pre-filled based on the, so if you go back, it's been pre-filled based on the reporting period year. However, if you're reporting on a product that your program has launched in 2013, as it says here, please check and modify. So if I'm reporting on a product that was launched, if this manual were produced in 2014, then I just need to adjust the year. And that's fine. Then, yes, And so I think, again, I'm going to stop here because it's been 2.1, it's been 3 indicators, so that's maybe quite a lot, to just see if you have any questions.
So I have 2 questions in the chat box, and I'm going to ask, Virginia, would you like to ask your question directly on behalf of yourself and Rochelle?
Hello?
Hello?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Sure, I can ask directly. I was just typing it because it's related to the indicator 1.3, so I didn't want to bring everyone back. But Rochelle and I were having this parallel discussion. Basically, she was very rightly pointing out that in the end, within the metadata sheet for 1.3, we didn't include youth or age group as a desegregation category. We have basically included gender throughout almost all the metadata sheets, but in particular for this one on training, it would be interesting for us in the tourism program to be able to identify which trainings were particularly focused on youth. And therefore, our question was whether we could still include it, even though it's not part of the metadata sheet. So as part of the pilot for the tourism program, will be okay that we also try to mark which trainings were addressed to youth.
Sophie, I'm not sure whether you were trying to unmute yourself, but if you are, we can't actually hear you.
No, sorry. Yes. No, I was wondering whether you would like to take this one. Cecilia, I mean, from my side, what I can say is that, I mean, again, underlining the fact that it's a flexible framework and that we are entering a test phase, so it's ready to test and try and understand what's working, what's not working, what we need, what makes sense to us. So I would say that you can very much include that in your reporting. And then in terms of how to include it, I mean, in the narrative section, for instance, you can include basically everything you think is relevant. Then if you also think you should add a column to this template to have the disaggregation category, that's also possible. I think as a general recommendation to avoid making a complete hell the task of the person who will then analyze the data and try and compile it together. We should try we should try to touch this template as less as possible, and try to avoid touching this template too much so that it stays harmonized across programs, because that's the idea here, to have a common structure, common indicator, and common methodology. But however, I think it's always flexible. If you feel that something really missing, there's something that could be added, and remembering that you always have your supporting narrative cell where really everything that you feel is relevant and important information should be provided. And I'm not on the right train. Yeah, here. So hopefully that answers the question. I don't know if Cecilia, you want to add anything here?
No, basically, I could agree with what you were saying, Sophie. I mean, it is flexible, so I mean, you are the ones who know what is the most relevant data for your program. So please do keep track of it. And I think the easiest way, if you wanted to add information, is either as preserve the narrative or probably at the end of the template. So that the template for each indicator space that it is, but then the columns, of course, if you wanted to add them at the end after all of the data that is already filled in here, then that can remain something that you can track and then analyze at program level if you wish. And then, of course, after the first reporting pilot, all these considerations will be very useful to integrate into the framework. I have also another question from Luca Santarossa in Sustainable Tourism Program. So, Luca, did you want to raise the question yourself? If so, please unmute yourself and just ask us the question.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Now the question was very easy. Concerning the indicator 2.1, no, sorry, the indicator, the involvement of organization, number of governments, 2.1 exactly. Since you show that in one line we put several governments and organizations, etc., of the same country, if I'm not wrong, right? One line per country. Yes. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Sorry. Go ahead. So I think on your
if you show us the template on 2.1,
you should be able to see it now. I'm on it.
Okay, yes. So one line, no, not per region, not per country. The country can be more than one. So my silly question is, who is filling in a line since he can put organizations from different countries? So we can have overlapping, you know?
So here the idea, it's a good question. It's a very good question, Mika. Thank you. I mean, the idea is indeed not to have overlap. I mean, when you report. So here, for instance, you could have overlap in, you can have overlap in countries, but you shouldn't have overlap in terms of organizations, because you have on your first line you have all of the national governments. On your second line, you have all of your civil society entities. On your third line, you have all of your United Nations, intergovernmental organizations. And on your fourth line, you have all of your business sector. So you should not have overlap in terms of the number of organizations reported. So yes. Then obviously, you may have more than one organization you may have one civil society organization and one business sector organization, both working in the Fiji. So you would have overlap in the country of the organization, but not in your. You see what I mean?
Sophie, if I can. Okay for the same category, but within the same category, we can have different names for the same organization. Or we can have different departments of the same organization if the organization is huge as a ministry or as a university, for example. So we can have the risk to have two lines with an Italian university or ministry, and in one case is one sector, one department, and the other is another department of the same organization. You get my point?
So not fully, but I think regarding whether you report at the department level or at the organization level, I mean, again, it's a judgment call for you to make. If, as you're saying, it's very big organization, you can choose to report at the department level because two departments are two different worlds, for instance.
Okay.
Yes?
Okay, it's clear.
Okay, great.
Maybe just to add to that, I think this is really at the program level. It really looks at your different types of actors within the program. I mean, this is the program quality, the coordination desk, LAC members, the official partners, and the contributors. This is how it's been divided. So there is also a part of centralization of this information in any case, both within the coordination desk and quality group, and on the clearinghouse. So this information system is readily available, and you already know as a program what are the different entities that are already in your program. So in terms of who reports on it also, the reporting on it will be centralized, probably through the coordination desk or to whomever the coordination desk has delegated it to. Sophie, maybe we can. I know we still have quite a few indicators, so
yes.
Shall we move to the 3.1?
Yes, definitely. We should move to the 3.1. Yeah. So the 3.1. So now we have moved to objective 3, and we have moved to the outcome level. So here we have 6 indicators, and the first one is the 3.1 on SCP in policy instruments. So here you have the number of governments and other organizations developing, adopting, or implementing, or being in process of policy instruments that integrate SCP. So in terms of example, one example of aggregated data could give 152 private sector actors working with the NYSP in the building and construction sector has made progress on SCP policy instrument in 2016. This is 10 times more than in 2013, for instance. Another example could be, since 2012, 20 governments in Asia and the Pacific region have made progress on voluntary schemes supporting the shift to SCP in the tourism and hospitality sector. So, to note, under this indicator, you can have both binding policy instruments and non-binding policy instruments reported. So meaning in terms of binding laws, regulations, standards, etc. In terms of non-binding, action plan, policies, strategies, programs, etc. And so this also means, as my example was showing, that you're not only reporting on governments, but also that are implementing policies, but also can be on private sector organization, on civil society organization, etc. One thing to avoid sort of double counting and mix up is that a policy is different from a change in practice. Again, your policy, your incentive policy can lead to a change in practice, but is not the change in practice. It's not a commitment as well. A policy has a different statute than a commitment. It's not a coordination mechanism either. A policy can set up a coordination mechanism, but they are not the same two things. And it's not a monitoring and reporting mechanism. Here again, you can monitor a policy. Monitoring and reporting can be part of a policy, but they are not the same thing. And same, final thing, a knowledge resource is not a policy. Right? Your policy text is a policy text. It's not a knowledge resource. And I think I'll get to the template and taking both indicators together. And maybe maybe I'll take the first three because education is very much linked to policy. So, and sorry, I'll put my. Sorry, yes. So, moving to indicator 3.2 on SCP monitoring and reporting. Here we are measuring the number of government again and of organizations, but this time which are officially establishing monitoring and reporting on SCP. So one example of what aggregation of your reporting could give, it would be since 2012, 20 local governments in Kenya have established new monitoring and reporting frameworks on water use with support from the NYSP. So, example of monitoring and reporting schemes can be annual sustainability reports by company, can be also certification systems that are being adopted, and also be part of accounting system, which would include, for instance, the national accounting system, which could include new indicator relevant to SCP. So one thing to note, but which is, I've put it here, but it's very much cross-cutting in terms of consideration, is the fact that for each reporting period, you will report on governments and on organizations which have either established or improved, for instance, if they integrate a new indicator, monitoring and reporting scheme within the current reporting period. They are not, so for instance, next year when you report in 2017, you're not asked to report on things that have happened in 2012, because everything will be linked to 2017. For this year, if you report on something that had happened in 2012, you will go into your template and you will change the year from 2016 to 2012. And I will show that in a moment. So moving to 3.3 on education to SCP, this one is measuring the number of countries integrating SCP topics in education practices. So example of what aggregation could give, since 2012, with support from the 10 YSP portfolios, 20 countries have integrated sustainable land use topics in their national curricula. So under this indicator, by integration, by integration of SCP topics in education, we mean only in formal education. That's an important point because there has been discussion on this, but eventually the decision was taken to only consider formal education under this indicator. And integration can have been made in national policies, can have been made in the curricula, so primary, secondary, tertiary level of education, and in teacher education. That's the three different places where we would look for integration to have been made. So one thing to note is that an integration of SCP topics in formal education does not constitute, again, a change in practice. Change in practices are related to production processes, so this one does not fall under this scope. And of course, when one country you are reporting on is reporting, has integrated SCP in education in their national education policy, you can report it under this indicator as well as under indicator 3.1 on policy, because this constitutes definitely a progress on your policy as well. So if we look at them, so here you can see the policy table, and I think something interesting maybe to provide an example of a target. So here, for instance, we are still looking at the STP program, and one target could be by 2022, the company representing at least 50% of the tourism industry annual revenue have adopted sustainability standards. It could be one target. So I'm not going into much details here, being mindful of the time. So here you have 3.1 with your number of organization, etc., and you get to your narrative. So here you're reporting on an improved standards for water, waste and energy use management in the hotel industry. You can also report on an international strategy, etc. So here on monitoring and reporting, I have 10 government and organizations which have adopted new sustainability indicator and monitoring tool. And on education, so here on education it would be one country. This is the Fiji. They've made progress both in their national education policy and on vocational education, where they have integrated a new compulsory module on sustainability tourism in the professional formation in the Fiji. So yes, I'm going to stop here a minute to allow some time for questions before we take the last three indicators.
Okay, for the moment I don't have any questions in the chat box, nor can I see hands raised. I think you can go ahead.
Thank you, Cecilia. And I mean, in any case, I mean, if you raise your hand, you can also, you can interrupt me, Cecilia, and we can take the question as needed. So, moving to the last three indicators. So we are now on 3.4, which is about changes in practices. So this indicator is measuring the number of changes in practices and in production processes supporting the shift to STP. So a change in practice and in production process means a change that directly results in concrete, tangible, and measurable sustainability impacts. Meaning that your change would either directly create jobs or directly reduce ESG emission, or, I mean, they would be directly linked to an impact, basically. And this, sometimes when you're wondering, can be a good way to manage to assess whether what you want to report on is indeed a change in practice or not. So under this indicator, obviously, the 10YFP and you in the program are working on very different things, on a broad range of change that you're trying to catalyze, and these changes are also of very different nature. So here, in terms of aggregation, we are going to be very mindful of this, and this indicator, as a consequence of this as well, is mainly a qualitative indicator, meaning that we are not here very much looking at adding up, because you cannot add up change in practices in one sector with changes in another practices in another sector. It would make no sense. But we are really looking at qualifying those changes and qualifying their scale and the scope and their effects and keeping a track of them. One way one thing we are going to encourage, you are encouraged to do, is to, as much as possible, provide associated budgets to those changes when you have them, because this can help assess scale and assess the scale of the change and help comparability in terms of scale across different types of change, but again with a lot of precaution. So that's indicator 3.4. And moving to 3.5 on commitment. So under 3.5, oh yes, and maybe a little example. So here, for instance, for 3.4, we were saying in 2016, with the 10YFP support, 100 hotels have equipped a total of 10,000 rooms with water-saving taps, for instance. So moving to the high-level commitment covering STP. So it's 3.5, it's commitment. So what can qualify as a commitment? It's basically any non-legally binding, official, and high-level expression of support or pledge. So example of commitment, so sometimes we call them commitment, but they also include declarations, statements, pledges, international decision, international resolution, etc. So it's quite broad. It's anything that has the status of an expression of support or a pledge and which is official. One thing which is quite important is the fact that under this indicator, we're only considering commitments that are taken at the highest level. So if, for instance, one person at the technical level in a ministry department writes you a letter committing to increase the work of the department on sustainability issue, this will not be considered as a commitment, although it's an official letter, but it's not someone that has the authority to commit its organization, so it wouldn't be counted here. Again, here we're only considering commitments which are either issued during the relevant reporting period and which are about something new. So if this is an organization pledging for over 100 times the same thing, it's not going to be reported every year. You should only report it once 1 year. Then finally, but a very important point, is the fact that if, for instance, you have an international resolution to which are signing up 20 governments, we are considering this as 20 commitments. So you have only one international declaration, but it's been signed by 20 governments, and so it's basically 20 commitments, or 20 governments, each one by 20 commitments, each one by one government. And so now moving to 3.6, and then we'll get to the template briefly before reopening it for questions. 3.6 is the last one here that we haven't looked at yet, and it is about intersectoral or multi-stakeholder mechanisms for coordination on SCP and about number of participating governments and organizations in these mechanisms. So what can be these intersectoral or multi-stakeholder mechanisms? They can be, in the governmental context, they can be interministerial committees on SCP, for instance. They can also be national multi-stakeholder roundtables. At a regional level, they can be the existing regional roundtable on SCP, for instance. So coordination mechanisms to be considered under this indicator should be either multi-stakeholder or intersectoral or both. Again, one thing which is very important is the fact that standalone meetings, so for instance, you're having one coordination meeting, which is not part of a broader mechanism, of a more regular mechanism, then it should not be accounted under this indicator. Here we are only considering, we are taking a definition of a coordination mechanism, which only consider things which are functional through a significant period of time. And for instance, one of the disaggregation categories you have under this indicator is the number of meetings per year. So we are looking at a time scale of beyond the year, and then it's again for you to make the judgment call, but just to say that standalone meetings do not fall under this definition. And obviously, you can report each coordination mechanism every year only once. So one example that we could have in terms of aggregated results from this indicator would be, for instance, since 2012, the 10 YFP has supported the establishment of 10 national, 5 regional, and 15 local coordination mechanisms focused on SCP issues, with participation in these summing up to over 1,000 organizations and bringing together both national, local governments, as well as civil society and the private sector. So thanks to all of the disaggregation categories, to the different data you will be providing through the reporting, we should be able to draw that kind of conclusion looking at all of your reporting brought together. And so having a look at the template now, here we are looking at the monitoring and reporting is done. So we are in the changes in practices. So here we're speaking water saving technology, like I was telling you earlier, the number of change, the associated budget if it's available, the country, the same disaggregation category that are cross-cutting, and then your narrative. And one thing to underline is the fact that the attachment and the links are very important and should be provided as much as possible to sort of provide additional information, and they are sort of the proof to what you are reporting in a way. So on the commitment, like here, for instance, we've taken the example of the fictive example of a commitment from the Fiji hotel company to upgrade their sustainability standards. So there were 20 companies, so it's 20 commitments, although it's the same commitment from each of the companies, but there are 20 companies, so 20 commitments. And here, for instance, in terms of attachment, you could attach the press release of the press conference during which these commitments were announced, for instance. And on the coordination mechanism, so here you have your committee on sustainable tourism in the Fiji that has been set up, which is a fictive example again. So it's one mechanism. The budget is not working here, but you have 50 organizations participating in this mechanism. In this coordination mechanism. They are both national governments, local authorities, civil society actors, and businesses all working together. So it's clearly a multi-stakeholder coordination mechanism. The sustainability themes which are most relevant to this coordination mechanism are energy, water use, and waste management. We are still in the tourism and hospitality sector. And so here you have your little narrative explaining that a new consultative coordination mechanism to support monitoring of progress on SCP into tourism practices has been set up in the region. And so you can have, in terms of attachment, the link to the last meeting summary of the committee, for instance, or even the decision document explaining the establishment and the rules of functioning of the mechanism. So I'm going to stop here, and then, we're almost done. There will just be a small, a short slide on the impact indicator to explain to you what's going to be the approach for this pilot phase on Teams. So I'm going to stop now to see if there are any questions on the last three indicators.
So, Sophie, I don't see any questions in the chat box or any hands raised.
Great. So then let's keep going for the last slide. And so the last slide is about the impact level indicator. So in terms of impact level indicator, you have chosen a number of them. There are 7 of them. You have one focused on energy use reduction or efficiency, one focused on mitigation of GHG and of other atmospheric, soil, and water pollutants. You have one focused on material use reduction or efficiency, another one on waste reduction, another one on water use reduction or efficiency, another one on sustainable land use, and finally one on decent employment. So what has been decided for this first pilot phase is that we would not develop any detailed methodology for each of these indicators, no harmonized methodology. This is to encourage you to report on all of the relevant data you have available on this potential, either they are potential or achieved impacts in each of your programs. And the fact of not having methodology, harmonized methodology, we hope, will sort of encourage you to report on as much as possible because you don't have to worry about any methodological constraints. So the idea during the pilot phase is really to use it as a stock-taking exercise to see first what type of methodologies are already being used within your program or by the partner you're working with and which are making these calculations. and what exists exactly in terms of data already within each of your programs. Based on what you will be reporting, there will be, of course, during the review phase, further consultation to see whether if you are, for instance, on energy use all using the same methodology, then it's easy and let's adopt this one. Then maybe for the material use reduction, you are all measuring it, but using very different approaches that are relevant to each of your sector, and maybe it doesn't make sense to have an harmonized methodology, etc. So just to say that, to explain this a little, however, we have still prepared a reporting template for the impact indicator, but it's a very simplified one, and it's only one sheet for all of the indicators. And so, as for everything you will be reporting, here you choose your year. So if, for instance, this has the impact achieved in 2014, I have to modify. Then you will choose which impact indicator you are speaking to. So here I want to report on water use reduction. So I'm clicking water use reduction. In terms of quantity, I'm talking here 100,000 liters. It's not an impact that's been achieved yet. It's an impact that's been projected. So that's projected based on, the new technology changes, the practice changes that I have implemented. It's projected that in the next 2 years, I will be able to save, the Fidji's hotel will be able to save 100,000 liters of water over the next 2 years. This project is co-funded by the 10YFP portfolio, by the 10YFP Trust Fund, so it's directly supported by the 10YFP attribution. It's in the Fiji, it's in the Asia and the Pacific region. It's obviously focused on water use in the tourism and hospitality sector. And here, in terms of attachment, I will attach the project document in which this calculation has been made, where you have your methodology. So it's important, and it's specified here that in the relevant attachment and link to attach the methodological specification, so we can at least understand them. And then you're asked whether you have established a baseline and a target related to this impact. So, for instance, a baseline here could be that there has been a recent report that shows that that estimates that the tourism industry consumes each year over X liter of water, and that X% of this could be saved by implementing water-saving technologies, for instance. That could be a baseline. And yes, so on the impact indicator, that's more or less the main point I wanted to underline. And I think, being mindful of the time, I'm here again going to stop. And that's the end of the presentation. So before just opening the floor, I also want to say that I need to echo Cecilia's thanks to all of the task team for having worked really hard on this framework and on all of the methodological specification, which I think now looks good and all ready for the test phase, thanks to all of you. To thank Cecilia as well, that has overseen everything really greatly, and Cecile, that has developed the template on which you will all be working as of Monday, and Cecile will be the one helping you if you have any questions during the reporting phase. So I'm stopping here, Cecilia, and maybe we open the floor for any last question that people would have, and then I hand over to you to conclude otherwise.
I see a few messages thanking you, Sophie, for this presentation, which is, as per the message, that it was really clear. So I just got to convey that to you. I don't see any questions per se or any hands raised. So at this point, I know we've gone already 15 minutes over time, so I don't necessarily want to keep you all on this call. Please don't hesitate to come back to Cécile for any questions that you may have. And also really, throughout the reporting, you will find that the document with the methodology really specifies step by step many of the things that Sophie has explained today. So it is your reference document. You will find many clarifications in there. And then, of course, we are here if you need us throughout the reporting phase. I think this is really the first time that we'll be looking at trying to pull together the results that the results of the CNYP that can both help us to focus and prioritize on the one hand and to show the results that the NYP is producing. So I think this is really a great step, and I look forward to working with you all on both the reporting and the fine-tuning of this framework in the next year. So thank you all for your time today. Again, as we said before, thank you to all of the members of the task force. This work could not have been done without you. I think it was really a great collaborative effort between all of us. So thank you, and we look forward to receiving your reports. Well, we will be sending the template between today and tomorrow for you, so that you have it ready for Monday by the time the reporting starts. But we look forward to receiving your reports, and we look forward to working with you. Thanks a lot.